Good morning. Dave here, coming to you from the Scarborough State Beach in Narragansett, Rhode Island. During the early days of World War II, German submarines operated close to the U.S. coastline, so close that people on the shore could sometimes see the smoke from U.S. ships that had been torpedoed. I've often wondered, how would I have reacted had I lived close by? Was there anything that the civilian population could or should do other than let the military handle the threat? If so, were those things implemented and did they work? This week's discussion board provided a reason to look into these things using the ProQuest Historical Newspapers database. Newspaper articles are a great way to spark discussion. They often are short or can be edited to be so. Articles can spark a number of discussions, tying together other course materials such as readings or lectures. These can be more free-flowing, allowing the conversation to go where the students' interests lie. In searching for articles about submarine activity off the United States coast during the early months of World War II, I found 5 articles that together tell an interesting story. The first article I found was 2 tankers torpedoed, one 18 miles off Jersey in the February 28, 1942 New York Times, not yet 3 months after Pearl Harbor. The article stated that in the previous 6 weeks, over 24 ships have been sunk or damaged off the coast. Perhaps more ominously, the article said that smoke from one of the sinking ships was seen by thousands along the Jersey shore. That's how close it was. What would the effect on the public of having U.S. ships sunk that close to a large population center be? Between February and May 1942, nearly 350 merchant ships were sunk off the U.S. coast, many of them tankers. Given that many homes and businesses were heated by oil and much of that was transported by ship, would this cause a panic? The military manned gun emplacements and fortifications up and down the coast to protect shipping, but unfortunately they were ineffective against submarines. Was there anything that civilians could or should do to assist? The second article, New Jersey Urged to Dim Out Beaches, appeared in the New York Times on March 12, 1942, and described how the federal government and military had asked that the state implement a dim out along the shore to reduce the amount of light which could be used by enemy submarines to more effectively track and target friendly ships. Officials were careful to state that this should not be construed as meaning residents or visitors to the shore were in any type of danger, but would such measures scare locals or perhaps cause residents and businesses to push back against them? Would a voluntary dim out be effective? The answer can be inferred in the April 28, 1942 issue of the New York Times that published a text of the Army order concerning the mandatory dimming of coastal lights. I probably wouldn't have the class read the whole piece, but would instead provide a summary of the order's requirements and emphasize the last paragraph, which stated complete blackouts may be prescribed for localities or communities that fail to meet the requirements as set forth in the above regulations. What are the pros and cons of this order? Is it too draconian? Was it necessary? This may answer that question. Shore areas failed to cut off glare in the May 1, 1942 issue of the Times, explain why such orders were promulgated. Voluntary compliance with the dim-out guidance didn't work along vast stretches of the Atlantic coastline. The Secretary of War stated that if it should prove a question of white lights on beaches or protecting the lives of our sailors, then the white lights must go. Agree or disagree? Finally, Satisfied with Dim Out appeared a week later in the Times, which reported that an evaluation conducted by a group of business and civic leaders from 2 seaside communities concluded that while there was still some light visible, the glare, which is what helps submarines target their victims, had been eliminated. So those are the articles I found that could spark classroom discussion about how close the war got in 1942 to the American homeland and how entire communities had to take part in the war effort. Continued research of this topic through local newspaper archives would be interesting. Hopefully my students will think the same. Thanks and see you next week.